Hey everyone, is Bernie Sanders a Chinese op? This is what he posted the other day, spiking the football over growing opposition to AI data centers. 5 months ago, AOC and I called for a moratorium on new AI data centers. We were called radical, crazy, and extremist. Today, 75% of Americans agree, and hundreds of candidates are responding. The message is clear. We need a moratorium. I'm Rich Lowry of National Review, and as we all know, there's been a huge debate over data centers in this country that the opponents are now winning, foremost among them, Bernie Sanders. Now, I want to demonstrate to you in this video why the case against data centers makes no sense whatsoever, why, if that case prevails, it would represent profound economic self-harm, and why, finally, if we do kneecap ourselves by refusing even to build the infrastructure to engage in the AI race with China, it would only benefit China, and how the Chinese have, at least at the margins, been encouraging the anti-data center case in the United States for their own nefarious purposes. So first of all, what is a data center? Now, a data center is a building, usually looks like a warehouse, that houses computers, data storage products, networking systems, all of that. And we're having this debate where everyone seems to think, wow, data centers, these are terrible new things. Why are these being imposed on us all of a sudden? Data centers existed forever, and there are about 3,000 of them already within the United States that run our daily lives. You would not be able to watch this video unless their data centers were supporting it, right? You'd be deprived of this video. You couldn't send emails. You couldn't send texts. Couldn't search the internet. You couldn't use GPS, and on and on and on if it weren't for data centers. What's new is we're having a rapid build out of data centers, and the new ones are much larger because the computing power necessary for AI is much more powerful than what we've needed to this point. But there's nothing new about data centers. The earliest ones date back to the 1940s. Now, Bernie Sanders and his allies make various complaints about data centers. Let's run through some of them. One is that they're unsightly. True enough, they're at least undistinguished looking, or perhaps even ugly, but this is true of every industrial or semi-industrial building, right? Just storage units in urban areas don't look great. Most factories don't or didn't look great. Maybe an exception for textile mills right at the beginning. There were these red brick buildings that were quite handsome, and that's because red brick always looks great, but most factories haven't been built with red brick. Now, most of these data centers are going to places where you're not going to build the most elegant buildings anyway. You're going to build other warehouse type structures, or maybe you're going to build nothing at all. Every part of the country is different, but in New Jersey, at least, these data centers are going into what are industrial parks, right? Industrial parks don't look great because they are industrial. Then you have complaints about the noise. Apparently, this is an issue with some of the older data centers, but the ones that are built to better standards and are using higher levels of technology, apparently the noise is less of a problem. Certainly, communities have the right to demand that these things are built to the highest standards. But one of the arguments that, again, Sanders and his allies often make about this is, would you want a data center in your backyard? No, most people would not want a data center in their backyards, but most people wouldn't want a highway in their backyards. They wouldn't want a busy road in their backyards. They wouldn't want a railroad line in their backyards. They wouldn't want a shopping center or a big parking garage in their backyard. They might not even want a school in their backyards because there's traffic in the morning and the afternoon, and there's a lot of noise at recess. But that doesn't mean we're going to refuse to build any of those things. But Sanders thinks this is a really compelling argument against data centers. Here was another X post from him the other day. Trump thinks that every community in America should welcome a data center. Great idea. Lead by example. Have your friend Elon build one at Mar-a-Lago. Now, we're not going to see a data center at Mar-a-Lago, of course, but Mar-a-Lago is in Palm Beach County, and there are data centers in Palm Beach County, at least 4 or 5. There's a big project called Project Tango. Now, it's been blocked from its most ambitious, massive expansion plans, but still going to get bigger. Now, what about water? We hear a lot of fear-mongering from Bernie Sanders and his ilk about how much water these data centers use. Now, it is true that data centers can use a lot of water. They use the water to cool off their computers. Now, the old technology, about half or more, I think, of data centers still use this, is an evaporative system. The water comes in, you cool off your computers with it. I'm simplifying, I'm not an expert on this process, but then the water evaporates and you need more water. So you're continuously drawing on the source of water. The new technology involves something called a closed loop system. You get the water and you use it to cool off your computers, but it's constantly recycled, so you're not continuously drawing on new sources of water. And just the fact of the matter is there are all sorts of other things in American life that we consider great or at least benign that use more water than data centers do. So this chart shows water usage for growing almonds, pistachios, watering golf courses, even maintaining residential pools. And you see the data centers are lower than all of them. I was in South Florida recently, by the way, and thinking about the data center debate, because I'm not a normal person that way, think about these things all the time. And I was within sight of a golf course, and there wasn't a soul out on this golf course for the days I was in South Florida, because no one wants to go golfing in a 92-degree humid day in Florida. But the sprinklers were going constantly, just constantly, day and night, as far as I can tell, keeping this thing immaculate and green. And that experience is repeated at golf courses all across America without anyone being outraged. Now, what about energy? That's a little more complicated, and these data centers do indeed need a lot of energy. USA Today had a good piece explaining this, though, the other day. Americans are understandably worried about electricity costs, which data centers can push up under some circumstances, mainly when they're built in areas without the grid capacity to support them. But those increases don't have to be permanent. Data centers add demand in a stable, predictable way, giving power companies time to plan new production and infrastructure to meet it. The real gripe shouldn't be with data centers, but with the regulations that make it so hard to build energy infrastructure in the first place. Regions with surplus power, such as North Dakota, have actually seen electricity prices fall slightly, even as demand rose almost 40%, largely because of data centers. Some states with the biggest demand increases have generally seen some of the smallest price increases. It's important to note, by the way, that politicians on both the right and the left, certainly populists on both the right and the left, say we need a manufacturing revival in America. We need more factories and factory jobs the way we did in the post-World War II era. But it's important to recall those factories were dirtier, more invasive, more disruptive, more dangerous than anything we're talking about with the data centers. If the rules we're applying to data centers now applied to steel mills or paper mills or chemical plants or oil refineries or a whole bunch of old school industry, we wouldn't have had any of those things. And by the way, the data centers, it's already been well established, are bringing major benefits to the places that are now housing them. Quincy, Washington is now home to more than 24 data centers, which pay more than half the city's property taxes. That windfall has bought Quincy a new high school, sports complex, hospital, library, police station, fire department, and even a water park. A population of 8,500 people got all of that, plus 900 new jobs. Its poverty rate has fallen from nearly 30% in 2012 to 6.2% in 2024. Quincy is the high end of outcomes, and it got in ahead of the curve. But data centers bring jobs and tax revenue to any city willing to host them. An increase in tax revenue let Richland Parish, Louisiana, pay its teachers $50,000 bonuses. Loudoun County, Virginia, now known as the data center capital of the world, has used the money to cut property taxes. Data centers are projected to generate $27 billion in tax revenue nationwide over the next decade. On top of this, by the way, these data centers are increasing wages for blue-collar jobs, electricians, plumbers, and the like. So here you have a revolution that is built on computing power. At the same time, it is increasing construction jobs. What's not to like? Well, you know who doesn't like it, or at least doesn't like it here in the United States? China. They want to win the AI race, because if they do, they'll have a technological advantage that will lead to more economic and national power, which is why, at least at the margins, they are encouraging the resistance to data centers here in the United States. The New York Times reported on this not too long ago. A state-owned newspaper in China recently published a satellite image of a data center in Gainesville, Virginia, writing in English that the development of artificial intelligence posed a threat to Americans' physical and financial well-being. A comic strip made to look as if it had been published by a Maryland news outlet, created with OpenAI's ChatGPT by people in China, the tech company said, circulated on X this year, blaming data centers for soaring electricity bills. It showed a tycoon smoking a cigar and clutching bags of cash. The video shared on X by a known covert Russian influence operation questioned the viability of a data center that an American company, Firebird, is constructing in Armenia. All are examples of a push by foreign adversaries to seize on what polls have shown as deep ambivalence, verging at times on hostility about the spread of data centers needed to power AI in the US and elsewhere. China, Russia, and to a lesser extent Iran have sought to use state media outlets to turn the controversy over data centers in the United States into a domestic fracture point, according to a new analysis by a threat intelligence company which identifies scores of articles and posts on social media this year. Now, none of this means that Bernie Sanders is a Chinese agent. Of course, I assume he's quite sincere in his wrong-headed belief here, as he is quite sincere in many other wrong-headed beliefs. But the fact is, what he's advocating would be destructive of the U.S. national interest and indirectly at least help an adversary. And the adversary is on the same side he is, which should tell you all you need to know about this issue, where he should be discounted as he is or deserves to be on so many other things. Hey, by the way, comment, like, or subscribe. I'm Rich Lowry. Over and out.